Hey everybody, this is Yule, owner of Fantastic Comics in downtown Berkeley, California. I'm also the proprietor of this YouTube channel that you're watching this video on. If you're at all interested in checking us out on any of our social medias, it's all under Fantastic Comics. So, this Saturday of March 28th marks our 13th day we haven't been in operation. That's basically 2 Wednesdays since we've had comics. Actually, since we were getting we realized that this whole pandemic thing was going to be a problem with being able to sell comics. So we put a lot of our stuff on hold, and Diamond is supposedly building up. I'm assuming what happened was a lot of people chose to do this, and Diamond realized that they were going to have to figure out what to do. And what they chose to do was to not distribute any comic books going forward. So Marvel, DC, Image, whoever was out there and hadn't made a decision about whether or not they were going to keep publishing, it really is a moot point because Diamond isn't distributing it to any stores going forward. In fact, any store that got their comics last week, that was the very last new comics you're going to see for quite a while, unless you're one of those crowdfunding type people. We have seen a lot of publishers try and do things to help spur a little bit of excitement in comic stores. Recently, we saw TKO Studios. They are a company that basically sells their comic books in totality online, although there are some comic stores that do carry their stuff. Personally, Fantastic Comics doesn't. There's a size issue with the comic books, and also I would probably get the collections if I was going to do that. Anyhow, they made a nice little offer that if you were to go and buy one of their books from them, then if you were to tell them your favorite comic store, they would send them 50% of the proceeds, which is a pretty cool thing, although it is also getting people used to the idea of ordering straight from TKO. So it's not 100% beneficial for the comic store. But it's good in this time for something like that to happen. Also, we saw Vault Comics. They said that if you were to go and get a gift card from your comic store, even if they aren't really open right now, that's kind of the concept, buy a gift card and redeem it later, then Vault would send you some new number ones that have yet to come out in comic stores. Again, it's kind of one of those things where they're giving you something without you having to go to the comic store. Although you do have to buy something from the comic store. Anyhow, that's kind of cool. So the longest the longest absence of a comic book publisher to say anything was DC. And finally today we heard something from them. And what we heard was that they were going to make all the comic books from March 18th, which was basically the last time we got comic books. And we haven't sold any of them to anybody. And then all the way into June 24th, all of those comic books are going to be made returnable. This is a great thing. Everybody's been looking for returnability from comic books for a long time. Hopefully this is something that Marvel might want to do. We already see that Image was already saying that they were the first to come out and say that they were going to make their comic books returnable. And, that's just a very positive thing. And I really hope that can keep on going forward. But of course, DC only said it was going to June 24th, so we'll see what's going to happen going forward. They also are talking about a multi-distributor model because, again, Diamond isn't distributing any of these things. Also, I wonder if maybe DC is out of their contract, or at least it's since Diamond has said they're not distributing right now, maybe this is like a lull or an out that DC can explore. Anyway, they're going for a multi-distributor model. A lot of people think that that's like Walmart, because they've already done 100-page giants in Walmarts. These are stories that actually weren't into comic book stores until recently. So DC's got something going on, and it looks like Diamond might not be involved, which is very interesting. It's kind of cool to have to to have to put another order in from another spot. I mean, it's not very cool. It's kind of cool when you're talking about balancing books and stuff like that. And again, if it's really cool if someone is returning, allowing returnability for their books. But don't forget, for a comic store that returns comic books, we're getting credits basically for things that we're going to purchase going forward. And these companies don't automatically make things returnable. It's not just at the end of the month. It's usually at the end of 2, maybe 3 months. And sometimes it sneaks up on you and you don't actually end up returning anything. So these are things that are positive, but not necessarily the greatest thing. And then it doesn't even take into consideration whether or not a store is open in another city as opposed to one that's still on a lockdown because of, governments and stuff like that. And not only that, there's a lot of stores that have been open anyway, even though, they're non-essential stores and they have been open. So, we'll see what that means. And we also have Brian Hibbs, and for people that don't know who he is the guy that runs Comics Experience in San Francisco. He's very instrumental in the FOC program, which is very beneficial for comic book stores. He's done a lot of things to help comic stores, whether you as a fan knew this or not. And a lot of times whether they wanted it or not. Anyway, here he is talking about DC's statement, and he's none too keen about it for various reasons, not unlike what I have just stated. And then he also talks about this Plan C distribution, which is all about the digital program and how it sounds like they might actually continue with the digital comics going forward, even though comic stores aren't open right now. So if you want the next issue of Batman, you might be able to get it digitally. Why would you even need to come to the comic store afterwards? Unless you're really dedicated. Are you? Let me know in the comments down below. Before we get to rubber blankets, I just want to let you know, if you want to support the store in any way, you can follow us on any of our social medias. It's all Fantastic Comics. You can subscribe to this channel, hit the bell for notifications, and let us know what you think about it in the comments down below. And of course, always give us a like. It's that thumbs up button down there. It seems like there's always going to be anthologies being put out from comic book companies, whether it's the mainstream or it's independents, from back in the past to back in my past, probably forever going forward. If there's a company out there that is trying to get a bunch of their characters known to you so that you can get interested and purchase future issues, they're going to put out an anthology to make that happen. And then there's Rubber Blankets, which is more along the lines of an anthology, like when Fantagraphics puts one out. It's a little bit more creator-based. We're trying to showcase the creator rather than a character or an IP. So Rubber Blankets is a little bit more on the arty side. It's produced by Dave Mazzucchelli, and for anybody that doesn't know him, he is definitely a legend in the comic book industry, mainstream comic book industry also, where he had a long run on Daredevil, and that was following Frank Miller, actually, so it was quite a feat, and he wasn't very well known as far as I remember, and it wasn't until later when he did Daredevil with Frank Miller on Born Again. It was like a little 6-part story within the pages of Daredevil. And then also Batman Year One. Fantastic stories, definitely. He has gone on to do other things. Most recently, I think the last thing he did was something called Asterios Polyp. It's a little bit more for the person that doesn't want to read a superhero comic book, but it's equally as good. And when you look at his art in that, and his style, and just his panache, if you will, you can really see how blessed we were to have him on a mainstream comic book like Daredevil for as long as we did. It was something that was special and never going to be duplicated again. When we first opened the magazine, they generously let us know in the table of contents here what every page is going to feature, even where the letters page is, which is wonderful. Some people actually like to read those first. And if you're anything like me, when you're reading an anthology, you're taking a look at what things you actually like in there, what creator, what story, what character, depending on the type of thing that you're reading. And I go through and decide what I'm going to read depending on how it looks, if it's something that interests me, if it's, long. Sometimes because of length of a story, I might actually not put it, I might not read it. I might read it immediately and, kind of leave some of the other stuff for later, which is nice. When you get to the beginning of this book, we have a Mope and Grope cartoon, which is written and drawn by Dave Mazzucchelli. It's a nice little comic strip that you might read in a newspaper type thing, and it just adds a little levity to the book. Then we have Life of Bub. This is by David Hornig. This is a this is a real crazy story. I like this one a lot. The one thing that really is interesting to me is that Nancy and Sluggo are often represented in independent comics that I've seen, and they're always the most messed up situations, and this one's no different. She marries him early, he's an abuser, and then we meet our main character who's hanging out with this woman. Then we go back to a new Mope and Grope. And then we have Happy Birthday, Senora. And these are all fine stories and everything. But it isn't until we get to the middle of the book where we're really, really, really going to want to pay attention. So I'm going to skip that really quick before we get there. And I'm going to say there's a Fuzz and Pluck story. Personally, Fuzz and Pluck never really did it for me. There's an art to this, a style that I have to commend the person for, Ted Stern, but it's just not something that really interests me. It's kind of like, God, I don't even know. It's just odd. It's just not my style thing. And not only that, I'm not into anthropomorphic stuff so much. So if this weird ass chicken's running around, I ain't into it. And then we end the magazine on another David Mazzucchelli story called The Death of Monsieur Absurde. It's fantastic. There's a sort of Art Deco, Frenchy kind of thing going with the characters. And wow, what an amazing ending to a really quick story. And it's it ends the way it starts, and you don't really realize it until the end. I really like the art in this a lot. It's a kind of like Mope and Grope. It's a little, what do I want to say? It's a little rudimentary. Maybe not as rudimentary as Mope and Grope. There's a style to this that's just really cool. The cartooning is excellent. And yeah, it's a really fun story. But what we're really here for, the reason why you get Rubber Blankets #3 at all, is for the story called The Big Man. And again, like everything that he's been doing in this book, Mazzucchelli pencils and draws and writes and does all that stuff that you need to make this happen. And what a story it is. On a beach, children find a giant man, strapped to a raft as he washes ashore. The kids poke him and prod him with a stick, and when he finally moves, they run away, all except one little girl named Rebecca. The children go and get their parents. As they live far away from, I assume, the city. They have to rescue this man and decide what they're going to do with him. And one person named Peter decides that it'll be okay if he gets locked up in his barn. Meanwhile, we see the different menfolk of this town discussing at a table scene what they're going to be doing with him. I really enjoy the conversation that's taking place, how it's illustrated. Here we have an establishing shot of the table scene, and then we have 3 consecutive panels broken up, which are there to convey a little bit of passage of time as they're having this conversation. And it is at the end of this conversation when the son of Peter comes in and says that the big man is awake. the villagers go in to see the big man and try to see if they can communicate with him. They don't know who he is, what he is. They said he's a monster, so they're trying to figure it out. And although he is given a pencil and paper that he actually writes on, it's in a language or a style that nobody can understand. They even compare him to a dog, a really big dog. And they give him food, lock him back up. And then later on, it's been a while, they've been waiting for the cops, and wife says to Peter that it's been 4 days. When are the cops coming? And he's like, well, we're out in the burbs. It takes a while for them to show up. And, they've been cooking for this giant. He eats more than 3 people. And it's when Peter goes to feed the big man with his daughter Rebecca. And Rebecca, you can kind of tell right off the bat, she doesn't really speak in full sentences. Her words are mumbled. She almost speaks like the giant, like the big man actually writes. So she's a special needs kid. And she goes with the father to go feed the big man and then stays outside while Peter realizes, maybe we could put this guy to work. So he gets him to do some stuff. Later on, the villagers find out about this, and they kind of talk to Peter and try and convince him to get the big man to help them out. And as the days go on, he is becoming a part of this society. And you can see, him just helping everybody out, him getting clothes made for him. He is well liked by everybody. And there is one person in particular that really likes the big man, and that's Rebecca. She is an outcast, if you will, with the other boys her age. They have obviously done some things with her that she's not proud of. And she goes in and she hangs out with the big man. And you see a very nice scene here where they're just having a real good time, enjoying each other's company. And at the end of this scene, we find out that a tractor has flipped over and one of the guys, Thomas, is caught under it. And so all the men go out and try and, get this tractor off this guy. But it isn't until the big man comes over and he is all by himself able to take that tractor, lift it, push it right outside. And it's then that the villagers realize what they've got on their hands. They've got a giant. They've got a giant that's so big and so strong that there's nothing they could do about him if they need to. And there is fear in their eyes, even as they're thanking him. And so you can kind of guess where this story is going. It's super powerful. The military does get involved, or the police do get involved. And it's quite tragic. Quite a moving story. I highly recommend you check this book out if you can. This book, Rubber Blanket number 3, came out in 1993 and was a deal and a steal at $8 with 72 pages of story. This is a fantastic little magazine that like I said, I highly recommend you check it out if you can. It's got fantastic stuff, and it is definitely something that I cherish still having. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the like button on the way out. If you have a comment and want to let us know what you think about it, put it down in the comments down below. And don't forget, we have a Patreon page. You can always drop $1 down there if you are interested. It's Fantastic Comics, again, like all our social media. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.